What up, YouTube? Today I will be doing the vulnerable machine Calamity, of course, on the one and only amazing website HackTheBox. It is a Linux hard machine. Of course, as always, let's just start off with a nmap scan, script scan, and a version scan. Or actually, let's spawn the machine. That would make a lot of sense. So now that of course we have now spawned the machine, let's go ahead and do an nmap scan with the IP address. And let's see what ports are open for us to investigate. Those things down, let's just do a no ping. Okay, and here we go. As we can see, we have port 22 open and port 80 open to the public. Nothing crazy here. No out of the ordinary ports really. These are pretty standard ports. And of course we see it's running Apache server with the title of Brotherhood Software and custom service info here, Linux running. Of course we see that also here on SSH. So of course first things first, let's just look at the web page on port 80. Alright, here is the web page. We have Brotherhood Software, writing security related software since 2009. SE Store is under development, haven't done much yet because we put a lot of time on our pro products, but it will soon be operating. Okay, well, there isn't really much here, clearly, on this webpage. I mean, we just have a picture, some, pictures going on. Not really much information. I mean, of course, we can look at the page source, see if we find anything here. If we see a comment here, it says, and bad at HTML and design since forever. Interesting little comment. We see the HTML, but nothing really that pops out. No real sensitive information that we can really see. So for me, I mean, the next course of action would to be some directory busting. So let's start with that. Let's do my favorite directory busting tool would definitely be GoBuster. So we're just gonna start off with that. Of course, if we don't really have success with GoBuster, then we can try and use a different tool. So let's just do that. So let's do GoBuster. Dir tacu http 10.10.10.27 tacw. Let's type out the word list of our choosing. We can do user share word list dirbuster. And the one I like to use most of the time is directory list medium. Of course you can use whatever you want, but this is kind of the one that I like to use most of the time just to start off with. And also to add on to the command, we can specify for it to look out for any PHP, maybe XML, and maybe text files. We can do tackr. So let's just run that and see what we get. Alright, cool. So right off the bat, we get an uploads directory, and we also get an admin.php directory. So two directories that are definitely interesting that we could look at and see what is there. So let's go to uploads. Here's the index of uploads. There's nothing in here, clearly, but definitely an interesting thing to keep open, just in case. Let me just start a new tab. 10.10.10.27. And of course the other one was admin.php, so let's just look at that. And we got a login page. I mean, of course we could just try out some regular credentials like admin. Nothing. We get a nice little message, get out of here. Let's just try admin password 1, nothing, admin password 1, 2, 3. Okay, so not really getting any successes. And like before, I mean, we could just try and see if we find anything at the page source. And you don't really see anything here, but if you notice at the bottom, we have a little scroll wheel. And if we scroll it all the way to the right, we get a nice little comment that that showcases the password. So voila. So we can just write that or keep that in our notes. Definitely an interesting way of hiding a password. But let's just write it down. Creds.text, password, save that. Cool. So we found a password, and now that we have found a password, let's try to log in again with admin, and let's try the password that we found. Copy, paste, see if it works. And it has worked. So we are in. And here we see we get a nice little message. Ta-da, it has nothing. What were you waiting for, dude? You know I ain't finished creating X Alvis. The boss said I am a piece of shit and that I don't take my job seriously, but when all this is set up, I'm gonna ask for double the money just cause he insulted me. Maybe he's still angry at me deleting the database on the previous site. He should keep backups, man! Exclamation mark. Anyway, I made an HTML interpreter to work on my PHP skills. It wasn't easy, I assure you. I am just a PRO on PHP. Access in here is like 99% secure, but even if that 1% reaches this page, there's nothing they can do. HTML is super harmless to our system. Try writing some simple stuff and see how difficult my job is and how underpaid I am. Your HTML. Interesting. So let's just try and put in some input and see what happens. Hello. And clearly we have some reflective vulnerability going on here with the HTML. When you input things into an input box like this, it's not really supposed to reflect back to the web page. If you ever see an instance where this happens, this is clearly a vulnerability. This basically means that the underlying web page is treating the input that's being thrown into here as legitimate code, which of course is a vulnerability because essentially I could take advantage of this and run some code that could reveal the backend or the server or information within that server. So let's see, let's try to take advantage of this and see what we can do. Since we do know that pertaining to the directory admin.php, clearly this server is running PHP. So we can basically run a PHP command and see what happens. Let's just do question mark PHP system, and let's just do a simple who am I command. Close that, semicolon, and a question mark. And let's run that and see what happens. Of course, there's a little typo, so let me fix that. Who am I? And let's see what happens. There we go. So clearly we see that we have revealed the name of the server or the web page, right? www.data is basically the user of the web page. This is basically what system administrators, this is the user that is responsible for being in place as the user that is responsible for managing a web server, right? So we clearly see that we have the ability to run commands. So let's just take it even further. You know, the next course of action would be to try to get a reverse shell, honestly. So let's try to do a PHP reverse shell. Let's set up a netcat listener. LVMP. Let's just do 1234, port 1234. Start that. Also, let's try to, we can close this. Let's see what our IP address is. Sometimes I get mixed up on whether I'm supposed to use my local IP address or the IP address of the VPN, but of course let's just try trial and error. So I already have a PHP reverse shell command ready to go. So let me just copy it, paste it here. And here, as you can see, I'll just paste out for you guys to see what it actually looks like. Here. So this is just a simple PHP reverse shell command that you would, of course, as you see, I would just put it into the input box and essentially fill in the parameters. I would put my IP address here and then the port number that I want it to connect to. And as you can see, of course, it is a bin bash, reverse shell, interactive, and let's try it. So I'm just gonna put my IP address within here, copy this, paste it, and then of course the IP address that I had set is 1234. So let me just make sure it's running again. Yes, listening. And let's try it. Okay, so here we see that we got a response, but for some reason it crashed. Weird. So we can try it again just for me to demonstrate one more time. I listen and running, click it, and again, so we get it. The problem isn't, the connection. We get it. We get a response, but for some reason it just crashes immediately, which is very interesting. So we kind of have to do some more enumeration to really see exactly what's going on here. And I mean, the good thing is that we have access to run commands on the system. So all we have to do is run some more different commands to gain some more information on what is actually going on here. So let's just, run a simple command. Let's check out the home directory. So we can just do php system home, close it, and we get a xalvis directory. Just to show you, gain a little bit more information, we could just do ls tac la. So it is open, it is a directory, we can go inside. So let's try to see what's going on here. So paste that, ls tac la, home, xalvis, see what's going on here. And let's take a look. So we got a bunch of different files and directories going on here. Profiles, sudo as admin successful, alarm clocks app, don't forget that text. We can look into that. And intrusions. This is interesting. Intrusions is definitely interesting. And I would say don't forget that text is definitely an interesting file too. So let's just take a look at both of those. We can do, let's do a cat home. See what's going on here. Peta keeps commands history in the working directory. You should make a directory in temp and work from there. Keep in mind that temp is not listable, so other users cannot see your files and folders if you don't use extremely simple names. Interesting. That's interesting. Let's just look at the other directory. Just see what's going on in here. Intrusions. So let's run that command. Intrusions. Wrong command. And let's take a look. Interesting. So here we have, it says possible intrusion by blacklisted process, netcat, and process killed at, and then it gives the date. So basically what this is a process that is built to blacklist any type of reverse shells from happening from these type of commands. Netcat, Python, sh, Python 3 is basically preventing intruders from gaining a reverse shell, and it completely kills the process as soon as it's created. So this is a pretty good security measure, but the funny thing about it is that it's actually fairly easy to get around. All we basically have to do is rename the process. We can just rename it to something besides the commands that it has listed as the blacklist. So let's do that. So of course, as we know, netcat is one of them. So let's just run a command, php system parentheses, copy bin netcat, and then we can basically copy it over to another file. We can do dev shm, and just for fun, let's just call it x marks the spot. Quotation mark. Let me just make sure I did that correctly. Yeah. Parentheses, semicolon, and then of course a space, and close it off. So basically what this is doing is just copying over the binary netcat and renaming it into another file in the dev shm, and then of course I'm just calling it x marks the spot. So let's run that. So after running that command, we can try to make sure the file was actually created. So I'm just going to copy and paste and make sure that the command actually worked. We do dev shm, which is basically the file where it was created, and then just run it. And here we see that it was created, so successfully. What we have to do now is change the rights, or the permission, I should say. So let's just do a change mod 755 dev shm x marks spot. Run that. That should work. And now we can basically try to execute a reverse shell one more time. So basically same thing as before. To use another PHP reverse shell, I'm going to set up another netcat listener. 1, 2, 3, 4 again. Change the port. Make sure the IP address is correct. And run the command. And here we see we get a successful reverse shell that does not terminate after a couple seconds. Fantastic. Let's see where we are. Let's go back to the home directory. Let's go to home, ls, xls, and we can cat out the user.txt. And there we go. Now on to the privilege escalation. There is a vulnerability out in the web that we can basically just grab with a wget command within this box. So all we have to do is look up the vulnerability. It would be this one right here, so we could just copy the link and do a wget, paste, download that. And of course, now that we have it on our system, transfer the file onto the victim machine. Do var, let's go to temp, and let's grab that file. Let's do a python 3 http://server. Let's just do 8080. Sorry, forgot the tag m. Start that. And then let's just do a wget. HTTP. paste port 8080 and the name of the file, which is what we want. Grab that. Now that we have it, and now we can just change the permissions. And then, of course, without further ado, just run the file. And here we are. We are now root. And we would just go to the root folder. And you have yourself the root.txt. And there we go. Thank you for tuning in, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you at the next one.